ticket word being thrown around now, and a lot of people have their opinions on it and have their identities tied into it, as well as being deprogrammed by it. And there's people who don't really know anything about it. So let me start off with my definition of how decolonizing, how I see decolonizing in my life, as well as in my presence and being in the world, which people call, what's your work? So decolonizing to me is the process of letting go of the paradigm and programs and inauthentic, dysfunctional scripts that in the Western world people are operating on. And a lot of that has to do with the colonial system that we are operating in, which happens to be very oppressive towards particular groups of people: brown, black, biopic, Black, Indigenous people of color. And it directly affects them and their beingness in the world. I am included in that. A mixture of the colonizer and colonized. I have European heritage as well as Indigenous Mexican heritage, and that's a pretty long story to get into, and you can piece together some of that stuff through my website as well as what I posted on Instagram. And if you're wanting to know more, you can DM me as well. But so decolonizing is reclaiming and remembering what was your birthrights and what your ancestors had left for you to continue on to enhance, improve, breathe life into, and honor, as well as in the original instructions of what that is, the ways of life, sacred living, intentional living, and not that we are striving for perfection and utmost excellence, but dignity, integrity, compassion, community. Decolonizing is detaching from reclaiming your power from systems that oppress you, that oppress people. And that definitely applies mostly to Black, Indigenous people of color, biopic. And it definitely also applies to people who are not of color. There's an oppression system across the board, just in all societies. There's always some hierarchical structure to keeping those at top. A lot of it relates to how we are not allowed to be human and connect and commune with one another authentically, respectfully, appreciating one another's contributions and uniqueness in the world. Specifically regarding colonization here on these lands, called the Americas. Colonization came here from Europe in 1492, and it's still here. There's very much a conquest continuing to keep the powers and the structure in place that they enacted back then very violently, and still doing it very violently in ways that is in your face, where you're kind of desensitized to it. So decolonizing also happens to be very much related to your identity and how you identify with your ancestral traditions, with your family, with your emotional regulation, your psychology, basic 101 of what it is to be a human being. Decolonizing therapy and looking at how therapy essentially is disempowering and dysfunctional itself, and not very adequate in very many ways of alleviating these symptoms that people are experiencing, which happen to be a byproduct of society, the way the structure is set up. Having us operate is not fully human to our full human capacity, and then making us wonder what's wrong with me. Okay, let me go get a label and get a prescription for how to deal with that. Exactly. Decolonizing in therapy, my dissertation that I wrote on the experience of healing through non-ordinary states of sacred breath work, which is something that you can find on my website as well as on my Instagram. There's all kinds of information on that, what that is, but essentially it is a modernized version of wisdom and indigenous influence techniques of healing and engaging in an ordinary state of consciousness in a ceremonial ritual context with evocative music, safety guards in place, sacred space created, and boundaries respected, trauma informed, and so that's sacred breath work. But my research was looking at the entirety of it, and specifically the community aspects and the cultural influences and the integrity with personal work as well as community work and lineage and honoring the sacred. And so one of the big agents of healing in that I found, which was no surprise to me because I was going through the process of being certified in it as well as doing my own work in that, experiencing it and applying it in my own personal life. And so community was like, yeah, this is definitely something's going on here with in regards to this, and this is coming from ancient traditions, from ancestors before, from different cultures. You know, there was something to healing in a community context. It is flawed and imperfect as it can be, as well as at the same time, you know, within a sacred container. So yeah, it's a healing agent. It is maybe for some the healing agent that they need in their life to again reclaim, to feel empowered, to apply in the ways that they weren't certain before. You know, like, okay, so this is what it's like to be in community with one another, this is what it's like to be in service of another, or I think that relates to this. Maybe this individual's interaction with me is an opportunity for me to learn, is an opportunity for me to set boundaries, an opportunity for me to see where I could advocate for myself more, to see where I can let down my guard, be vulnerable, humble more, and you know how far I can push myself in regards to being in service to others, being in service to myself, what that means. You know, that's like so huge, that self-compassion for yourself. And in normal therapy, conventional westernized therapy, you know, people are isolated and put into, you know, a room which is very private and intimate, and definitely, you know, nurtures an individual and makes them feel safe, where they can talk about some really difficult things. And I'm not knocking that. It definitely is something that's super like helpful and very powerful for people that need that. But there's also that group community aspect too that's equally as important. And most Western conventional therapies focus on the individual aspect of it, and as well as they do not incorporate the spiritual component. They kind of shy away from that, or they leave it for mainstream religion sort of approaches and not really look at the what they call alternative, but really the ancient spirituality.